Thank you for standing by and welcome to today's Cloud Services Community Webinar. Today's topic is winning your piece of the $193 billion managed services market with a recurring revenue model. All phones are currently in a listen-only mode, and later there will be a question and answer portion with instructions being given at that time. You may also ask a question at any time using the chat window located in the control panel, and we will answer those along with the rest of the Q&A portion. Today's presentation is being recorded, and you will receive a copy of today's materials following the call. Now, I'd like to introduce our expert speaker for today's webinar. David Neely is the Director of Channel Sales and National Accounts for Spectrum Business, a role he has held since September of 2009. He has over 20 years of leadership experience in telecommunications and strategic partner programs, as well as a master's degree in organizational leadership and UBM Channel IPED Channel Master Program. David founded the Spectrum Business Partner Program in 2010 and has been instrumental in growing the channel double digits every year since the program's inception. David, welcome and take it away.
Thank you, Sam. I appreciate it. And thank you, everybody, for joining today. I'm going to go through a slide deck. We've got a couple questions, so let me get started. We're going to go through a number of kind of industry trends. We're going to go through some statistics, provide some examples of real-world situations, and provide you all with some advice on what we've seen over the last couple of years and how we're currently, as a service provider, integrating with the VARs and agents that surround this channel. Some of you may not actually connect the dots, but Spectrum is actually Charter Communications. So in March of this year, we rebranded ourselves as Spectrum Business. Our corporate offices are located in Stamford, Connecticut, and it was decided through some of the M&A activity that was being proposed and some of the future branding of our products and services that as we migrated into some new territories and continued to grow our footprint, that we would rebrand our name to Spectrum. So if some of you have not realized, that's the same company as Charter, and we have been pushing that out there in the marketplace for about 3-4 months now. So Charter and Spectrum has continued to grow and currently is the third largest cable company, or sometimes called the MSO. We are behind Time Warner Cable, and Comcast kind of leads the charge. Some of you may not understand, but the footprints, and I'll show you a couple maps here in a second, but how the cable companies actually operate. We don't compete against each other, and that's very important to understand. We actually work together to solve the end customer's needs and our partners' needs, especially when there's multi-site opportunities. Spectrum operates in 29 states. We've got just under 6 million customers. We've experienced tremendous growth over the last 5 years. We've had 25% year-over-year growth, and just around $8.4 billion in annual revenue as accounted for back in at the end of 2013. Our primary products, traditional, just like you would think of in the residential model, we apply many of the same exact products, but we are always expanding, especially in this marketplace and as it is being affected by the cloud. But in its simplest form, we're offering video, phone, and broadband or data circuits out there. And the broadband data circuits could be either coax or fiber circuits. This gives you a little bit of a view of how we actually operate our wholly owned network. We do at times resell some of our network to others, but primarily our focus for the commercial businesses is focused on all three main categories: the SMB, the mid-market, and the enterprise level. I happen to manage both the national accounts, which really is defined in our space as the branded nationals that you would think of, and then the aggregators that are out there, somebody like a Megapath or a DSR or Granite. And then on the channel side, the traditional channel partners, those third-party agents, the VARs, MSPs, system integrators, traditional kind of telecom agents are the two kind of sales channels that I represent. In this area, you can see we've got a high concentration up in the Michigan, Minnesota, Wisconsin markets, and we've got a very high concentration in the St. Louis, Missouri, and down in the southeast, Alabama, North Carolina, South Carolina. And then we've got pockets throughout the country, some up in the northwest, up in the Kennewick area, just in kind of southeast of the Seattle and kind of northwest of Portland. And then we've got pockets down in Southern California as well. We've also got Dallas-Fort Worth market, and we've got a little bitty pocket kind of in the Nebraska area, but that represents 29 states that we've got footprint where we're not competing with our other cable brethren or our peers. Here you can kind of see we do have about 200,000 coax route miles, 65,000 fiber miles. We've got 10,000 lit buildings and a very good chunk of near-net buildings. These are opportunities for our agents, our VARs, our partners to light those buildings and gain the customers inside those buildings. So there's a tremendous amount of opportunity for our near-net buildings. This gives you a quick overview of how the top 5 cable cos, where their footprint really lies. And this presentation will be available so you guys can take a look at it. I'll have my contact information at the end, so if anybody wants some of this information, we'll be happy to provide it to you. So this kind of gives you a sense. Again, we don't compete. Our footprints rarely overlap, and we basically, I guess, we have monopolies in our areas. So in Denver, it's Comcast. In Madison, Wisconsin, it's Spectrum. Okay, why is it important to consider selling in a recurring revenue model versus kind of a one-time charge where you get a one-time gross margin on hardware sales or on services being provided? So I'm going to kind of go through a little bit of a lesson around a model of if we sold $1,000 every month for 12 months, does anybody have any idea what that model is called? It's actually called the Rule of 78. And the Rule of 78 is outlined by this graph. So if we sold a $1,000 circuit in January, sold another one in February, the first one we sold was right down here. So we're going to get recurring revenue each month. And every time we sell a new circuit, we build on those circuits that have already been sold. So we continue to sell one new circuit each month for 12 months. By the end of December, we would have sold 12 $1,000 circuits. Many people answer the question, what if I sold $1,000? How much is that going to be worth? Some people answer the question, it's $12,000. In reality, it turns out to be $78,000, or the Rule of 78. So you're compounding this recurring revenue and your overall revenue into the business, and it becomes a very powerful compensation model for your businesses. Let me go through a couple of terminologies that we use and sometimes are or not used in different verticals, different sales channels, but we oftentimes use disaster recovery or backup disaster recovery, so BDR. I'll oftentimes refer to a CSP or an SP as a service provider, and those individuals are traditionally providing voice, data, and video services. CSF, as many of you guys know, we like to use all our acronyms, so I'm going to kind of go through and kind of level set everybody, but critical success factors, MSPs, managed service, VARs, value added, and MSOs, multiple system operators. So what's taking place out there? It's this collision and inside the agent landscape. It's these traditional kind of telecom agents, these traditional VARs that have had business models in the past, and it is changing. There is a true collision taking place in the marketplace right now, and what's driving that change? It's the VARs, the technology distributors, the MSPs are moving into what has been oftentimes referred to as a traditional telecom agent space. So these have been the trusted advisors that knew about telecom. They understood PRIs, they understood T1s and DSL. So what's happening is there's a large number of VARs, system integrators, MSPs out there that are starting to understand that they can make money, and a lot of that is being driven by the explosion within the cloud. There are some existing master agents that exist out there. These master agents typically fall underneath the cable cos, and they've all begun to add cloud services to take advantage of this multi-billion-dollar market that's out there. And customers are continuing to understand that all of these changes that are taking place, and they're relying on the trusted advisors that are out there. So those that can take advantage of this this disruption in the marketplace can really become that trusted advisor or somebody that the end customers can rely on for that advice on what's taking place out there. Let me give you a quick overview of the market and who those VAR and who the partners are, who the providers are that are out there. You can see that VARs and solution providers are making up 35%. Consultants are making up 22%, managed services 9%, and so on and so forth. In this kind of call out that I put here, the typical VARs, the typical partners that are out there, they're currently experiencing about just under $3 million based on a survey back in 2011. And I've got some current statistics, but I'm just trying to give you a snapshot of what's taking place out there. But right now they're leaning on about $3 million of hardware sales, about $1.7 million in software sales, and then unified communications and carrier services about $1 million. This is a typical kind of partner makeup. And then 55% of all respondents recognize that 5% of annual revenues are going to be coming from the cloud or managed services. So they see that this is growing. 27% of partners who added vendors added also service providers to their suite. So they're broadening the number of service providers because those service providers are adding cloud services. They're expanding their product set. So they're seeing that they need to add new vendors and providers. And approximately 28% of company revenues were derived from new customers. So they're not relying on what was their old customers. There are new broad customers out there. There's new companies out there There's actually companies that are, in quote, born in the cloud companies that out there that these VARs are adding to their suite, and they're taking advantage of these new customers that are taking advantage of the technology. On this right-hand side, I've basically outlined some technologies that are sold or recommended or that are supported out there, but you can see the large percentage, 16%, are branded systems. 13% business application, but interestingly enough, it's carrier services at the bottom at 3%. You've got unified communications at the bottom at 4%. Data centers, 11%. I'll show you some other statistics and see how that's changing. Let me move on to some things that have taken place in the marketplace, and what's how large service providers, how carriers are adapting to this change. But telecom companies, cable companies are becoming single source to the cloud for millions of customers. The service providers have huge amounts of both residential, commercial business customers out there, and they're seeing the opportunity. So you can see the three circles that I put out there. They're taking advantage of acquiring some of these companies that have expertise in the cloud. And in this case, CenturyLink bought Savvis. This was back in 2009, 2010. TWC bought Navisite to take advantage of this. Verizon bought Terramark. And what's driving this? It's a demand for bandwidth out there. It's a demand for information by customers. It's basically an evolution in IT availability. The data centers, the WANs that are out there, the networks that are out there, and then the cloud, the entrance of the cloud opportunities for people to take advantage of that within their IT space is causing a lot of this change. So what's the future, and what do we see? What do we see within kind of the carrier, the service providers, and how do you adapt to that and adapt to how we see the future? We see it specifically our direct sales force. We see our sales force that's focused on SMB, enterprise, national accounts. Right now, we have our direct sales force. It's about 50% of our overall employees. But the future, it's actually going down. We see that as a need to rely on more VARs out there, and you'll see that in a second. Inside sales, we see within the call centers, both the inbound, outbound, we see that slightly increasing within our organizations. Within wholesale, we see, again, a little bit of an increase. But most importantly, on the indirect side, we see a doubling, if not a tripling, of this use of the channel. So we've been strengthening in many of the telecom companies, many, especially the cable cos, have been increasing their reliance on agents, partners, and VARs and MSPs as this migration towards that true trusted advisor. What those end customers are needing is somebody to lean on in their local geography to guide them with all of this noise around cloud. They're leaning on you as the VARs to take advantage of that and guide them in the right path. So here's a kind of a further underscore what I'm talking about. There was a recent survey by about 1,000 MSPs out there, and it just underscores how important the VARs and the agents are to our marketplace. 66% recommend or influence the sale of service providers' carrier services. 20% are bundling carrier services with their managed service offerings out there. 13% are taking advantage of the resale of our service and carrier services, and 11% act as just a pure agent for the carrier. But you can see how important the VARs and the agents are. They're influencing a very large chunk of our product offerings. So what are the pros and cons to adopting a recurring revenue model? As I outlined before, companies that have long relied on one-time charges or spiffs or upfront and just the margin, the rule of 78 is a very powerful compensation model to take advantage of. And we can help with that. We can help teach you that. We've been doing it for years, so we understand it. And we can accurately and effectively bill and pay those commissions to agents and VARs out there. This additional compensation is a huge value to the managers of your organization, the presidents, the C-suite out there. And the telecom cable companies are adding a tremendous amount of value to their product offerings and to the end customers. So they're seeing the service providers, there's carriers, as a single source and single opportunity. So you can rely on many of the tools and resources that we have available within our organizations. And that really kind of leads to number 4, which is that partnership. We are seeing, and we're not just most of the cable companies and many of the telecom carrier organizations treat the channel, treat the VARs, the agents as partners. They are not looking at it as a kind of a stepchild. They are embracing it and sinking tons of resources in ensuring that the education and the knowledge is there to really take the baton and drive additional revenue for our organizational goals. Some of the cons have been a little bit of a learning process, but some companies have jumped into the recurring revenue model a little too early, and they didn't understand it. They didn't know what resources were out there that the carriers or service providers could provide, and they just kind of stopped. So it's a lack of confidence. And that, again, I think we can overcome that, and I've definitely seen that we've overcome that with some of the partnerships that we've occurred out there. But they have happened, partly because it's not fully committed within the organizational framework to adopt and move towards a growing recurring revenue model. Number 2, some of them jumped in with both feet and said, I'm going to make a ton of money at this, so I'm going to build a master agent model out there. And they found it to be complex, so they also kind of stopped. So I would, as an advice, take your time and work in partnership with a couple of key service providers and grow the business organically and make sure that it's consistent and the message that permeates down through the organization is consistent. And finally, some of the VARs and some of the agents that have moved towards a recurring revenue model, found it again a little bit to be complex. But again, I've seen in the past it was mainly because of a lack of knowledge, a lack of resources, and a lack of leaning on some of the service providers to guide them through those initial 60, 90, 120 days. So the question, can agents and VARs adapt to the compensation and expertise issues? Absolutely. There is no question in my mind that I've seen it over and over again, but it has to start at the C-level and at top management to embrace it. One industry expert that I was talking to at a recent convention said these markets are absolutely merging, and if you don't get on board, you're going to get run over by the rest of the market. Let me walk you through a real-world situation, and this literally took place within our cable environment. So a VAR, let's call it VAR A closed a $250,000 deal with an end user. So on that gross margin. Under B, made about $30,000 on about 12% gross margin. The end user, though, for the same purchase, also wanted to buy some connectivity, but he went to a different VAR, a different telecom agent, and acquired that connectivity to take advantage of that hardware and executed an agreement for 36 months. Total contract value was about $42,000, spread over 3 years. So it was about a $5,800 deal per month that agent acquired in recurring revenue. At just a 14% commission, that equated to, after 3 years, of over $211,000 in gross margins. So that first VAR A, left over $200,000. We're just shy of $200,000 in commissions on the table. So those are the types of things that agents and VARs out there are becoming aware of, that while they're in front of customers, they could take advantage of this connectivity and make some additional revenue through this recurring model. Let me walk you through a little bit of this collision that's taken place and what was the old model and what's becoming the new model. But distributors, just as I kind of outlined, distributors in that past model, you know, they're stocking hardware, they're packing it, they're shipping it to the VAR. The new model, the kind of their emerging model, is distributors are starting to white label some of those. They may not even play a role in it, but more common, they're acting as kind of a master, sometimes a master agent out there. So some of the technology distributors out there are understanding that they can make some recurring model. They're leveraging the VARs underneath their existing VARs and introducing them to this recurring revenue model to sell this connectivity out there. And they're finding that the adoption rate is much quicker than they expected. There are certain VARs out there that are kind of burying their head in the sand and saying, I'm not going to change. But many of the VARs and agents out there are taking advantage of this. Service providers, how it's changing there. It used to be just a traditional buyer-seller relationship with the vendor, and now the vendors are becoming partners with the service providers. So they're working on progressively introducing new products to take to market. The customers that are out there, customers are used to just basically taking a physical product or some license to have the product on-prem. Customers now are understanding that they can acquire a service and have that retained in the cloud. So it doesn't matter where the IT asset is located. It's really immaterial to the customer. They're beginning to trust the cloud. And then partner profits. Partner profits used to basically be made up through the resale, through rebilling, but they're really becoming reliant or becoming aware of the ability to acquire compensation models that are surrounding residual commissions, and including some margin and some spiffs, but typically through a recurring model. Vendors under traditional model, you know, typically looked at authorized channel partners and drove sales through the distribution. Now what they're seeing is sales through technology and through the service providers can create opportunities for creating their own services out there. And then the overall brand. The technology vendors were trying to hold on to their brand identity, and now they're relinquishing that and allowing the service provider to take over this brand and back up to the top, really looking at it much more of almost a white label. Here, I just wanted to underscore just the value of the changes that are taking place out there. But you can see in the left chart, from 2013 to 2015, 54% of service providers see that the channel will continue to increase. Service providers out there saw that it was just 36%, and a very small percent, 11% saw that the channel may decrease. So overwhelmingly, their service providers are seeing the channel as the opportunity to continue growth. So who are or how, what partners are changing between what's important today and what's less important? You can see that, again, overwhelmingly, 75% see the cloud as the central focus for the service providers. VARs are a huge increase at 50%. Also, MSPs, huge increase at 50%. And then you can see down below. So the overwhelmingly the cloud, the agents, the VARs, the MSPs out there are becoming more and more important today. And real quickly, here's how software as a service, the growth in billions that have taken place in just a 3, 4, 5-year time frame. Forrester estimated that there'd be a 20% increase, and from 2012 you could see that 43 billion jumped to 56 to 72. We anticipate $87 billion, and in 2016 you've got almost a 4-time increase in just under 4 years. So what's driving this market condition? What's pushing the market in this area of recurring revenue model? But the cloud in general is pushing everything in new directions. So in a recent CompTIA survey at the end of 2014, they saw that 41% of the respondents felt that the cloud was pushing this recurring revenue model in this direction. And then 36% was demanding new IT services. 35% of the respondents felt the recurring revenue model was of interest and was causing this drive towards these market conditions. And you can see the rest. So how do we take advantage of this? How do we utilize some of the new VARs, some of the agents out there? From a service provider's standpoint, you all, the VARs that are out there, you all have customer databases. You have existing solutions that you're providing to your end customers. We see the partnership between us and the partnership of helping you grow in kind of this circular format so that we can work together to grow this relationship. But together we build an overall strategy. We build some program around that, a program inside your organization and a program that is a partnership inside our organizations. We utilize and you can take advantage and brand. Oftentimes we can allow co-branded opportunities for our technologies. So working with VARs to maximize the impression of the brands that are in the market out there, and taking advantage of educating the end customer with those branded technologies. The service providers, as well as you on your end and the agents, we're seeing the recruitment process. So it's kind of the dating process. What are we doing to go through to identify who are, on your end, who are the right service providers, and on our end, who are the right partners out there that we can leverage, so neither one of us are wasting our times. And then it's a two-way street, how we enable each other. How do we help each other? One of the things that we pride ourselves on here at Spectrum is making it easy to do business. So we're building APIs. We're making the day-to-day business as efficient as possible, so we're not wasting each other's time. But so the big question is, how do we enable each other in that partnership to make sure that we educate and train you on the products and services that we provide, and then how can you educate us in what your end customers need? And oftentimes what we've found is as we learn to work together, it's actually the partnership to the end customer that oftentimes will approach an end customer as a team. So we'll actually go on site with the VAR and attend end customer meetings, either with our SE, with our channel managers, so that they see that you're much more than just a kind of a third-party representative for some of those carrier solutions. You're really in partnership and creating added value to those end customers. And then ultimately, we create just that. We create customer demand by educating them and nurturing those relationships through this continued education of each other's value propositions. And then ultimately, both sides of us need to do on a regular basis, and we oftentimes, at a minimum, will do monthly meetings with our partners. Not just QBRs or quarterly business reviews, but truly looking at monthly meetings. How are we progressing? And putting out 30, 60, 90-day plans so that we can execute on both of our organizational goals. So what does that all boil it down to? So from a service provider standpoint, as well as you as a VAR or an agent out there, we're both looking to match each other and recruiting the right partners. And it goes both ways, again. So we're trying to find individuals that are committed to this space. Again, we're using this slide just to summarize what I was saying a little bit before, but we're engaging with each other. So we're adding value, we're selling value through each other. Again, oftentimes we're going to meetings together, and we do have an enormous amount of resources of sales engineers, channel managers, marketing individuals, product people that can be made available, network tech ops. All these individuals can help support and come across to the end users that we are a team working together. And then constantly helping each other, educate each other, make ourselves more productive, and then manage each other to ultimately maximize the value for the end customer. So those are really the kind of the 4 recipes for success. So how do we win the piece? How do you win your piece? How do you take advantage of this? First, it's really adopting the methodology within your organization that your management and your sales force are willing to sell the cloud. So a key factor is truly leaning on that service provider for a lot of the industry statistics, a lot of the support information to show and demonstrate how valuable the cloud can be and how valuable a recurring revenue model can be. Again, the ability to for that sales force to be able to sell at the C-suite level. And to get there, oftentimes you need some of the service providers to join those meetings, to get the highest level of decision maker. And when they know that Spectrum or Time Warner Cable is attending the meeting, oftentimes that C-suite decision maker will take the meeting much more readily if we're both kind of going in together. But there is a certain amount of trust, and we understand that as service providers, that we're not going to overstep our bounds. So typically we allow the VAR or the agent to lead those discussions, but we're there to just demonstrate the partnership and the power of a true committed carrier service provider. The other key point is really to have your financial team and your internal decision makers and management team truly understand the financial model of recurring revenue. Once they fully start to get it and they can understand the rule of 78, you can truly then build a cloud recurring revenue model. But there has to be a willingness for the VAR and for that willingness by the VAR and the partner to grow in partnerships. And oftentimes, I've seen in the past, and it's changing, but VAR's agents out there will be a little bit siloed and protective of their customer databases. What we went through just recently is I had a customer that it was kind of an aha moment. They didn't realize that we could do a mass kind of serviceability check on upwards of 50,000 customers this partner had, and they were currently managing. So we actually took their 50,000 customer list, scrubbed it against our serviceability check, and provided back to them, of their existing customers, how many of those were Spectrum in Spectrum footprint, and if it wasn't Spectrum, whose footprint was it within the cable industry? So we supplied to that partner all 50,000, and then they could use that information to manage those customers that were within the next 6 months, hypothetically, coming off term. So they could manage some additional revenue opportunities by just realizing that certain cable footprints did fall into each one of their existing customers by potentially adding a DR or disaster recovery type circuit on top of maybe their existing primary, maybe traditional AT&T circuit or CenturyLink circuit, whatever it might be, and even took advantage of that and some of the price points of the bandwidth the cable companies are offering, and made the cable co the primary, and then convinced their end customers to maintain their existing AT&T circuit as a backup. But in general, they basically added additional ARPU to each one of those circuits. So it was just a huge opportunity, and they experienced within the first 4 months an 18% increase in additional revenue just by having this free kind of serviceability check that we provide to our partners out there. Again, understanding the recurring revenue model is key to it. Willingness to let someone else build a customer. What I'm mentioning here is we as service providers and carriers have been billing millions of customers for a long period of time. We get it. We've got it down to a science. Giving up that kind of practice allows us to kind of create a much more efficient and sometimes even a single statement bill that maybe wasn't capable of past partners or past agents that were trying to resell, rebill it. And leaning on some of the service providers to provide that value has really relinquished some of the headaches that some of those agents had been trying to accomplish in their former business model. And the final 2 points, just making sure that we have the technical capabilities between each other, we understand each other's technical capabilities, and that's constantly changing. For example, here in Spectrum, we just actually launched our our SMB and mid-market Wi-Fi circuits. So we're constantly going back to our agents, our VARs, our channel in general, and educating them on the square footage that can properly be associated to that Wi-Fi opportunity, how it can be branded by organizations like McDonald's, or at the SMB level, or organizations at the even the distribution, large distribution warehouses for like General Motors or United Healthcare. So they're office buildings. But those are key changes in technology that we work with you to try and help educate and train. So here's a couple quick questions to ask yourself. What percentage of current product solutions are right now that old one-time kind of margin-based business, or what is the percentage of recurring revenue within your organization right now? Is it growing? Is it right now 5%, 10%, 15%? But there is a commitment to get there and continue growing that. I really believe there's an opportunity for both models to really work together. There's still always going to be that hardware sale out there. There's going to be an opportunity, but there's continuing to be cloud opportunities out there, but under this recurring revenue model, and it's understanding who those companies are that are offering those services, what service providers, and just adding those suite of services and products to your solutions is key to continuing to not get left behind. The second question here: what will your product mix look like after 2 years? Talk to us, work with us as service providers. We've got a number of products out there that we have in the sandbox. We're testing out there, kind of like the Wi-Fi services that we're pushing out, some cloud-based services that we're pushing out. But work with us so that we can use you to launch some of those services. Again, at my earlier slide, 66% of all products out there are being influenced by you all. And then ask yourselves, what percentage of your current products are cloud-focused? Again, get a nice add to your current product mix. And how many service providers do you need in each swim lane? So keep challenging yourselves to look at different carriers out there, because different carriers are adopting different services and products at different paces. At Spectrum, we're rapidly expanding our product set, and we see this as just a tremendous opportunity. So what are the keys to success? We truly believe that we see that the VARs, the agents out there, the key to this is a recurring revenue model. It creates a very sticky relationship between your end customers and you as partners and VARs to those end customers. That recurring revenue model keeps you engaged with those end customers. But partners need to continue to add value. They need to continue to stay learning of what are the new technologies that are taking place. You are that trusted advisor. You are that individual that, with this collision within the marketplace of the breaking away from kind of traditional kind of IT services, moving towards the cloud, it creates this unknown. End customers are leaning on you all for that information. You can see here, we realize partners, as you migrate to a recurring revenue model, that the margins have to be there. The percentages have to be there. Typically, service providers are offering 14 to 18% in residual commissions. And on top of that, sometimes there's even spiffs involved. So ask around to your carriers and service providers. Currently, Charter right now has a 3x spiff. So you're getting somewhere between 14 to 18%, and in addition, a 3x spiff. So it's important to understand what those compensation models are out there. Partners need to accept and want that billing. I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but it's an important point. We really can add value on your behalf by creating this this opportunity to be much more sophisticated in our billing, especially around multi-site organizations, especially when it falls in other carrier footprints. We can be that single source and add additional value to your end customers. But it is important that we need to talk, we need to communicate and collaborate between each other, and it's important to come across as that unified team to those end customers, and by doing that, we are adding value to the end customer. Except in the marketplace that the customers are driving these questions, they're driving this change, and that change that they're driving is this need to have information much more available and less on site. They are driving the cloud. They're driving this need to have much more as a service type offerings. You need to listen to your customers and try and adapt to what they're requesting. There will be continued M&A activity like CenturyLink, like TWC and Navisite. There was some recent activity where there's some discussions around Comcast and Time Warner Cable that took place, very large M&A discussions that did fall through ultimately, but there will be continued M&A activity. And this will create disruption in the marketplace. And that disruption means that customers are going to look to you to give guidance of what they should do. Should they buy that circuit from that organization that might be purchased by somebody else? They're going to look for that direction. And again, as you as a trusted advisor, you become very powerful to your end customers, but it's keeping you informed through us as service providers, and we fully understand that's important. Continued, again, I've mentioned this a couple times, or continued partner-to-partner collaboration. It is happening faster and faster. Take advantage of certain things like Salesforce has a tool called Chatter, and Chatter allows each of the key stakeholders on an opportunity to have interaction with the multiple SMEs that are out there, or the multiple stakeholders that are involved in each deal. So stay involved and continue to collaborate. And then understanding the models and understanding the service provider's total ecosystem is key to your success. So what are your choices out there? What is it that you guys can do? Yeah, you can do nothing. You can just kind of put your head in the sand and let the strong survive and see what happens. I don't advise that. I don't think that's the right next step. You can take and identify partners and continue to work together in partnerships, and it is a leap of faith. You can see in that graphic it's taking this leap, but it's important to start to branch out and understand this recurring revenue model, because it is going to continue to grow. And you can continue to look at these born in the cloud partners out there. You definitely recruit some of these organizations. Stay on the leading edge. Understand what's taking place, what's going on out there. So you have both extremes. You have do nothing, or you can sink all your eggs into the leading edge cloud partners. Somewhere in the middle is probably where most people should, and we can kind of help you with that. We can guide you to what the events are and conventions, and what the industry opportunities are to learn more about the opportunities that service providers and carriers are offering out there. But the key takeaway here is we're leaning on you. So we'll end there. We'll open it up to some questions. I know we've got about 5 minutes left or so, but Sam, I'll lean back over to you and see if there's any questions from the field and see if there's anything I can answer.
All right. Thank you very much, David. We will indeed open up for questions. If you'd like to ask a question, you can do so one of two ways. You can first raise your hand using the Raise Hand button located in the GoToWebinar control panel. And if anytime your question has already been answered, please do lower your hand and remove yourself from the question queue. Or if you prefer, you can ask via the chat box and chat window located in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. So we've had a few questions come in throughout the presentation. David, with more and more businesses moving to or being born in the cloud, what implications does this have for your business?
Yeah, I think it's being born in the cloud provides a really a true shift from, and I'll answer the question from an end customer's perspective. I think end customers are still trying to put their arms around it. What does that mean to be born in the cloud? What is the cloud, and what are the implications? And I've touched on it a couple times throughout the presentation. I think it really is understanding that your end customers are confused. They don't understand what their choices are, and they need to trust that moving to kind of this born in the cloud business opportunity to create some additional efficiencies is out there, but they need someone to guide them there. They need somebody to create that relationship where they can provide the value that they're going to experience and the efficiency and the cost savings that can be taken advantage of. But most importantly, they need to trust the solution has been proven. They need to understand that they're not the first one to try it, that others have been doing it successfully and that's the type of information that you need to provide as far as the features, the benefits, but also the trust, the confidence that it is the right choice. So we've got a number of white papers that we put together, case studies that we put together to try and add that comfort for our partners to pass along to end customers so that they get the implications of the cloud.
Awesome. What do you see as the biggest business opportunity in the shift to the cloud?
I'm gonna. I've made a big point of it, and throughout the presentation, I really think, the biggest shift, and because of the shift to the cloud, is really this reliance by the end customer on someone that they can have as a trusted advisor. In the past, you've had internal employees that have potentially convinced upper management that they understand their IT solution. They're the director of IT, they're the manager of their systems, and that's been true. They've always managed that evolution within their organization. But as you shift to the cloud, you've got a reduction potentially in staff at that end customer, and they see that potentially as an opportunity to understand that they can save some headcount, and then ultimately lean on the cloud provider and lean on ultimately the VAR agent as that trusted advisor to guide them to organizations that can provide those same solutions through much more efficient and cost-effective means versus having premise-based equipment that they needed to hire a staff of IT individuals to manage. So it's a definite shift of efficiency and cost savings, and that is again truly relying on the VARs and the agents to guide them in the right directions, to be that valued kind of trusted advisor.
Excellent. Thank you, David. Well, unfortunately, we have hit the top of the hour again. We do have a few more questions that are left, but what we will do with these is we will add these as forums into the cloud services community, and we will work with David to make sure we answer these questions as well as any other follow-up questions that arise from that. But David, thank you again for your time and presentation. It was a wonderful, wonderful presentation.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for attending. Please do take a few moments to fill out our post-survey event. We take all of your feedback and apply it to future events to try and continually improve these. But this concludes today's conference, and you may now disconnect.